They killed 100,000 Polish civilians, men, women, children, erased in ditches and burning buildings. When the war ended, Poland didn't just mourn. It executed 5,000 of the killers, often in the very places they'd turned into mass graves. This is the gruesome truth of what happens when the prey becomes the judge. August 1944. Warsaw is rising. The Polish Home Army has taken up arms against the German occupiers. For a moment, hope flickers through the battered city. Then Hitler gives an order that will turn entire districts into slaughterhouses. The order is simple. Kill anything that moves. Burn everything that stands. No prisoners, no mercy. The Wola district becomes the killing floor. SS units, police battalions, and collaborationist troops sweep through the streets. They kick down doors. They drag families into courtyards. They line people up against walls and shoot them in the back of the head. The bodies pile so high that soldiers have to climb over them to reach the next group of victims. In one factory yard, 5,000 people are murdered in a single afternoon. In a hospital, nurses and wounded patients are shot in their beds. A priest is forced to pour gasoline on a pile of corpses and set it alight before he too is executed. This is not chaos. This is a planned extermination. German commanders call it pacification. The civilians of Wola know it by a different name. The end of everything. But Wola was only the beginning. The killing would spread far beyond Warsaw's streets. Over the next few days, between 40,000 and 50,000 civilians are butchered in Wola alone. The exact number will never be known because many bodies are burned to ash on improvised pyres. German soldiers take photographs. They smile. Some send prints home as souvenirs. The Wola massacre is one piece of a much larger machine. Across occupied Poland, the Nazis are methodically erasing the Polish nation. The intelligentsia, priests, professors, writers, are rounded up in mass arrests, trucked to forests and shot into open pits. The operation has a name: Intelligenzaktion. By 1940, 100,000 members of Poland's educated class have been murdered in cold blood. In the Palmiry forest, just outside Warsaw, the ground becomes a graveyard. Between 1939 and 1943, German execution squads bring truckloads of prisoners here almost every day. They are forced to kneel at the edge of freshly dug trenches. A single shot to the back of the head, and they tumble forward into the dirt. The next victim is pushed to the same spot before the body stops twitching. The pits fill fast. The forest floor swells with the dead. The killers kept records, cold, bureaucratic lists. Those records would later become evidence that no one could deny. Across Poland, the pattern repeats. In the Lublin region, tens of thousands are herded into ghettos and then marched to execution sites. In Białystok, entire Jewish communities are burned alive inside synagogues. In the countryside, villages that offer any resistance are erased from the map. Men, women, children, all shot and buried in mass graves that farmers are ordered to plow over. By the time the war reaches its final year, 100,000 Polish civilians have been murdered in direct, hands-on killings. This number does not count the millions who die in camps and ghettos. It is the tally of those who were simply taken outside, stood against a wall, or pushed into a ditch and executed. But wars end, and when this one did, the survivors began to count the names. May 1945, Germany surrenders. The guns fall silent across Europe. But silence is not peace. In Poland, a country reduced to rubble and ash, the silence is full of ghosts. The new Polish government, backed by the Soviet Union, immediately sets up the Supreme National Tribunal. Its job is not just to punish. It is to document, in excruciating detail, exactly what happened. Investigators begin sifting through German records, eyewitness accounts, and the testimony of captured soldiers. The evidence is overwhelming. The perpetrators, however, are scattered across the continent. Some are hiding under false names. Some have been swept up in Allied prisoner-of-war camps. Others think they have escaped entirely, blending into a shattered Germany where no one asks questions. But the hunters are coming. Rudolf Höss, the commandant of Auschwitz, is tracked down by British intelligence in 1946. He is living on a farm in northern Germany, posing as a gardener. When they find him, he is calm. He tells his captors, almost with pride, that he personally oversaw the deaths of more than 2 million people. He does not see a crime. He sees a job well done. Jürgen Stroop, the SS general who crushed the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, is captured in the American zone. He is carrying a report bound in leather, titled, "The Warsaw Ghetto is No More." In it, he boasts about destroying 56,065 Jews captured or killed in a single month. He seems genuinely surprised that this document is now evidence against him. Amon Göth, the butcher of Poissy, is tracked down in an American internment camp. He had been passing himself off as a regular soldier. Witnesses identify him. Survivors describe how he used to stand on the balcony of his villa and shoot prisoners with a sniper rifle, just for sport. He shows no remorse. These were the names the world knew. But the tribunal had a much longer list. Thousands of lower-ranking perpetrators are also being rounded up. Camp guards who beat prisoners to death, police officers who led execution squads, Wehrmacht soldiers who took part in the Wola massacre. They are brought to Warsaw, to Krakow, to Gdańsk. They are placed in cells that once held their victims. They are given lawyers. They are put on trial in full public view. The evidence is not just documents, it is bones. Exhumation teams dig up mass graves across Poland. The pits at Palmiry give up their dead. The factory yard in Wola reveals layers of charred remains. The forest floors, the churchyards, the roadside ditches, all speak. Each skeleton is a piece of testimony that cannot be cross-examined. The trials are swift, the sentences are death, and the method of execution Polish authorities decide must match the horror of the crimes. The gallows were about to rise, and they would rise in the very places where the killing had happened, April 16, 1947. The morning is cold. A crowd gathers inside the Auschwitz camp, now empty of prisoners but still reeking of death. In the yard, a wooden gallows has been built. It stands exactly where the camp commandant once stood to inspect his prisoners. Rudolf Höss is led out. He walks steadily. He shows no fear. He looks at the gallows as if it is an administrative inconvenience. A priest offers him final rites. He declines. He climbs the steps. The noose is placed around his neck. A trapdoor opens. His body drops. It swings for several minutes before going still. The man who designed the factory of death has been processed through it in a different way. This execution sets a pattern. Across Poland, the architects of genocide are brought back to the scenes of their crimes to meet their end. Amon Göth faces the rope in Krakow's Montelupich prison. He raises his hand in a Nazi salute just before the hood goes over his head. His last words are "Hail Hitler." The trapdoor slams open. The salute does not save him. Jürgen Stroop is hanged in March 1952. Unlike Göth, he does not salute. He simply stares at the gathered officials and says, "You will regret this." Then the rope snaps taut, and the general who burned the Warsaw Ghetto to the ground is nothing but dead weight. Arthur Greiser, the man who oversaw the extermination of the Polish population in the Warthegau, is executed in Poznan. His hanging is made public. Thousands of Poles line the streets. When the trapdoor opens, a roar goes up from the crowd. It is not joy, it is release. But the highest-profile hangings are only a fraction of the story. The real number is far larger. In the months and years after the war, Polish tribunals sentenced thousands of German war criminals to death by firing squad or hanging. The executions are not hidden in prison basements. Many are carried out in public squares, on the sites of former mass executions, even inside the concentration camps themselves. A kind of dark symmetry plays out again and again. In Lublin, former Mamajenek guards are hanged on the camp's grounds. In Stutthof, the commandant and his staff are led to a gallows built next to the crematorium. In the forests of Palmiry, firing squads execute the SS men who once pulled the trigger on Polish prisoners. The same trees that witnessed the massacres now witness the punishment. The official count of Nazi criminals executed in Poland exceeds 5,000. Some estimates place the number closer to 6,000. They are not all famous names. Many are ordinary men who thought they would never be held to account. The clerk who signed deportation orders, the guard who drowned children in buckets, the soldier who smiled in photographs next to piles of bodies. Their deaths were recorded with the same cold precision they once used on their victims. But the graves did not close forever. The hangings ended decades ago. The last death sentences were carried out in the 1950s. The world moved on. New wars, new politics, new generations who could barely spell the word Auschwitz. But in Poland, the ground never quite stopped offering up its dead. Fast forward to 2023. A construction crew working near the town of Chojnice in northern Poland unearths something no one expected. A trench packed with human remains. Archaeologists are called in. They find the bones of hundreds of people, men, women, children shot execution style. This is the site known as Death Valley, where German squads murdered thousands of Polish civilians in 1939 and 1940. The exhumation reveals a truth that had been buried for 84 years. The killers did not cover their tracks perfectly. The evidence is still there, waiting to be found. In the same year, Polish officials dig at a former concentration campsite near Działdowo. More bones, more bullets, more forensic confirmation of what the witnesses always said. The science of identifying remains is now so advanced that individual victims can sometimes be named. Families who lost grandparents in 1940 receive a phone call. They finally know where the bodies are. They finally get to grieve at a specific patch of dirt. But bones are not the only thing Poland is unearthing. It is also unearthing a bill. In 2022, the Polish government formally submits a report to Germany. It demands reparations for the destruction of the country during World War II. The price tag, 6.2 trillion zloty, roughly 1.3 trillion euros. This is not a symbolic request. It is a line-item document that tallies the burned cities, the stolen art, the orphaned children, the years of stolen labor, the 2 million Polish citizens who perished. Among them are the 100,000 civilians executed in massacres like Wola and Palmiry. Germany's response is swift. The reparations issue, they say, was settled decades ago through earlier agreements. The case is closed. No payment will be made. Poland does not accept this. The government points to the freshly opened mass graves, the families who still wait for acknowledgement, the survivors who are now in their 90s, still demanding a day in court. The 5,000 executions after the war were supposed to close the books. They did not, and somewhere under a Polish field, a backhoe blade scrapes another skull. In 2024, a German court sentences a 99-year-old former camp secretary to a suspended jail term. She is one of the last. The trials are almost over. The mass graves, however, still have more to say. In Palmiry, the forest keeps offering up bones. In Chojnice, the archaeologists are only halfway through the trench. The 5,000 executions of Nazi killers in Poland were meant to be the final word. The final word, it turns out, is not yet spoken. The final word is not yet spoken, and perhaps it never will be, because every time the world thinks the last Nazi has been buried, another one shuffles into a courtroom, leaning on a walker, 98 years old, and suddenly the past is not past at all. In June 2021, a 100-year-old man named Josef Schutz sits in a German court. He is the oldest person ever tried for Nazi-era crimes. The charges: accessory to the murder of 3,518 people at the Sachsenhausen concentration camp. Schutz had been a guard there from 1942 to 1945. He claims he did nothing wrong. He says he was just a farm worker, forced into uniform. But the court sees the records. They see his name on the duty rosters. They see the dates that align with mass shootings of Soviet prisoners and the gassing of sick inmates. In 2022, he is found guilty and sentenced to 5 years in prison. He appeals. He dies a free man before the appeal is heard. He dies in his own bed. The 518 people he guarded did not get that luxury. Irmgard Furchner was a teenager when she went to work at the Stutthof concentration camp, just east of what is now Gdańsk, Poland. Her job: secretary to the camp commandant. She typed the deportation lists. She filed the execution orders. She made coffee while the crematorium chimney smoked day and night. After the war, she married, changed her name, and vanished into ordinary life. In 2021, at age 96, she is brought before a juvenile court because she was under 21 at the time of the crimes. The trial is surreal. She tries to flee on the first day, leaving her retirement home and taking a taxi to the train station. Police catch her. She sits in the courtroom, head down, refusing to speak. In December 2022, she is convicted of complicity in the murder of more than 10,000 people. Her sentence: a suspended 2-year term. She will not spend a single night behind bars. Mini cliffhanger. The survivors, those still alive, watch the verdict and ask the same question. Was this justice or just theater? But while the German courts wrestle with these last fragile defendants, Poland keeps digging. Literally. In 2024, the Institute of National Remembrance expands its search in the Chojnice Death Valley. Ground-penetrating radar reveals more anomalies. Backhoes scrape away layers of soil and ash. The archaeologists find a new trench, distinct from the one opened the year before. Inside it are the skeletons of more than 500 people. Many of the skulls still have bullet holes. Many of the hands are still wired together with rusted metal cord. Some of the bodies are dressed in the remnants of Polish army uniforms. Others are in civilian clothes, their pockets still holding rosaries and photographs of children they never saw again. One of the forensic anthropologists later says, quietly, "We thought we had found them all. We were wrong." And Chojnice is just one site on a very long list. In February 2025, during routine maintenance work near a railway line outside Treblinka, workers hit something hard. Not rock, bone. The construction stops. Investigators arrive. They uncover a mass grave that does not appear on any known German map. The victims are approximately 300 people, mostly adults, some with their skulls crushed by rifle butts. The grave is located just 200 meters from the Treblinka extermination camp perimeter, but it was not dug as part of the camp's organized killing system. This was an ad hoc execution, likely carried out by a police battalion that passed through in the spring of 1943 and decided to eliminate a group of captured partisans and Jewish fugitives in the most efficient way they knew. The discovery makes headlines in Poland for a single day. Then the news cycle moves on. But for the families of the missing, the day changes everything. A 78-year-old woman in Lublin receives a phone call. A skull found in the Treblinka grave matches mitochondrial DNA from a sample she submitted in 2012, hoping against hope. The skull belongs to her mother, who vanished in 1943. The woman had been 4 years old. She remembers a man in a black uniform pulling her mother out of a line. She never saw her again. Now she knows exactly where her mother was buried, face down, in a ditch, with a bullet in the back of the skull. She does not cry when she hears the news. She says she used up all her tears 50 years ago. She just nods and asks if she can come to the site and put a stone on the grave. The answer is yes, a stone, one stone, for 100,000. And still the arithmetic of death refuses to close. In March 2026, just 3 months ago, the Polish government announces it has completed the 3rd volume of the reparations report. This volume focuses exclusively on the murdered civilians, the 100,000 who were executed outside the camps. It names them, village by village, massacre by massacre. It calculates the economic loss of their extinguished lives. It demands that Germany acknowledge these individuals not as a collective statistic, but as personal cases, with names, ages, occupations, and last known moments. The German government issues a statement reiterating that the reparations issue is legally and politically closed. A spokesperson says, "We honor the memory of the victims, but we cannot reopen a chapter that was sealed by international treaties." Poland's foreign minister responds the next day. His words are clipped, sharp, and designed for the cameras. "The chapter is not closed," he says. "It is still being written in the ground. Every shovel of dirt we lift reveals another page, and every page is covered in blood." The diplomatic standoff continues, but the ground does not negotiate. There is a symmetry here that is too dark to ignore. The 5 new Nazis executed in Poland after the war were meant to be the final, conclusive act of justice. Their hangings were public, their firing squads were documented, their burial sites were often unmarked and forgotten. In a strange twist, many of those execution graves are now being accidentally discovered too. In 2023, during roadworks near a former prison in Wrocław, workers unearthed a trench containing the remains of 32 men, their hands still tied behind their backs. their skulls fractured by bullets. Forensic tests confirmed they were German prisoners executed in 1946. The local authorities quietly reburied them in a military cemetery. No crowds gathered, no stones were laid, and so the dead on both sides are coming to light, but only one side's dead are being counted with sorrow. The hunters are all dead now. The hunted are all dead. But their children and grandchildren still walk the same streets. In 2025, a Polish historian publishes a book titled The Unfinished Verdict. It examines the 5,000 executions in granular detail, comparing each death sentence to the crimes that triggered it. The conclusion is uncomfortable. The book argues that while most of the executed were undoubtedly guilty of mass murder, some were convicted on flimsy evidence, some were shot without any trial at all in the immediate post-war chaos, and some were simply in the wrong uniform at the wrong time. The 500 figure includes a margin of error. It is not a clean number. It is a human number, full of rage and exhaustion and a desperate need for closure that never quite arrived. The book is attacked by nationalist groups in Poland. It is praised in Germany. It is ignored by most of the public. But it raises a question that hangs over this entire history, like smoke from a crematorium chimney. If some of the 5,000 were not guilty, does that dilute the justice of the others? Or does it simply mean that the hunger for revenge was so vast that precision became impossible? The documentary makers, the YouTube scripts, the clickbait titles, they rarely ask that question. They prefer the clean story, the dark symmetry, the 100,000 murdered, the 5,000 executed, the scales supposedly balanced. Mini cliffhanger. But the scales are never really balanced. The weight of 100,000 dead cannot be lifted by hanging 5,000 killers, no matter how many ropes you braid. In the summer of 2026, a new mass grave is found near the Belarusian border, in a forest that used to be part of occupied eastern Poland. It contains the bodies of 1,200 Polish civilians, shot in 1941 by Einsatzgruppen. The grave is discovered by a team of amateur historians using old Luftwaffe aerial photographs. The photographs show a series of barely visible depressions in the earth. The historians dig. They find the depressions are exactly what they feared. The pit is so deep that the forensic team has to use a crane to lift the skeletons out, one by one, in a basket normally used for construction debris. A journalist at the scene writes a single sentence in his notebook. The dead are still coming home. And this is the truth that the 5 zeros and executions could never erase. The final word, the final shovel, the final rope, they do not exist. There is always another bone under the moss. There is always another 99-year-old who once typed a deportation list and now sits in a courtroom, breathing, blinking, mortal. There is always another politician who says the case is closed, while in some quiet forest in Poland, the ground shifts after a heavy rain, and a fragment of skull pushes through the soil like a stubborn seed. The extended outro has now been added.